Hey there, listeners. Well, I had an interview with a guy called Ken Rusk. You know, we talk about leadership a lot, and it tends to be more white collar kind of leadership that we're looking at. When I met with Ken, we talked about more about blue collar leadership. And Ken Rusk is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and motivational speaker. And he actually defied the odds by achieving the Wall Street Journal bestseller status with his book called Blue Collar Cash. Why? Because he even did that right throughout the pandemic, and that's why he defied the odds. He's also the host of a podcast called Comfort, Peace, and Freedom, and he's the founder of Rusk Industries, and it's a growing portfolio of construction companies. Now, an interesting discussion around blue collar, but also about leaders in general, and what we think about, what we do, how we surround ourselves with the right people, but also what are we needing to do to help ourselves actually have a better life. And so Ken and I had a great discussion about things. And so the title of this episode, of course, is called Blue Collar Rules for a White Collar World. Okay, listeners, it's time for you now to get into the interview. Enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us again today. And I've got an awesome guest with me. His name is Ken Rusk. Ken, a massive welcome to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Now, Ken, whereabouts in the world are you based today?
We are on the western shore of Lake Erie in Ohio, on the Ohio-Michigan border, a little town called Sylvania, Ohio.
Excellent. Well, that sounds really nice. Small town? I like those little small towns because there's a lot happening in those little small towns, and there's a lot of history and a lot of great people and village feel. Is that what it's like for you?
It really is. I grew up in small towns all over Ohio, and I have kind of affinity for those. So although I do like to go to New York and walk around Manhattan every once in a while, or Chicago, it's really nice to live in a small town where there's not a lot of traffic and everybody, and there's hills and rivers and little restaurants, and it's a cool place to live.
Excellent. Now, you're a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and a motivational speaker, and you've got a book out there called Blue Collar Cash, and you're also the host of a podcast called Comfort, Peace, and Freedom. Now, I've given a little introduction just now, but also in my introduction to the episode, but what we love to hear from you, Ken, is a little bit more about your background. Tell us more about you.
So I'm one of 5 boys. When we were younger, we were all under the age of 9. My father was a Marine, a U.S. Marine, so he ran the house like a barracks, which was good most of the time, but not all the time. He was an imperfect perfectionist, we like to call him, and that was great because we learned a lot about discipline, and we also learned a lot about working with each other. And so we always had part-time jobs when we were younger, 12, 13, 14 years old. I was always out doing something. If I wanted to get that baseball bat or whatever I wanted to get, I had to go out and work for it, which was cool, trading labor for things. And my start in business is simple. My high school shared a fence with an industrial park. We would cut through a hole in that fence to go to the carryout after school to hang out. And for us, it was always about what was going on. There was always a lot of energy, a lot of people milling about in this industrial park, lots of businesses in there. So when I was 15, I went up to one of them and I said, "What do you do here?" They said, "We dig ditches." And I said, "I am wholly qualified to dig ditches, so let's go." And I started doing that in the summertime, and in the winter, I worked in the office when I was still in high school. So very quickly at 18, it was either college or keep working. They wanted me to go open franchises around the country, which was brand new for them as well. So I lived in Columbus and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Chicago, and I opened up companies from scratch, which was great for me because I learned a lot. Got tired of living out of a suitcase. At 23, I moved to where I live now and started my business in 1986 with 6 people, and we have nearly 200 today. So it's been a heck of a ride.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And the book that you've come out with, and Blue Collar Cash, can you tell us more about that? What was the book about?
Well, when you're hiring ditch diggers like myself, you go through a lot of revelations about the human condition. You get to see a lot of what people think about, a lot of what motivates them or what doesn't motivate them,
Mm.
or what's missing from their lives as a go forward, as a looking forward mechanism. So for me, I became an almost involuntary life coach, Dennis, where I don't have any letters after my name. I have no college education, but you learn to help people with their first car, their first credit card, their first apartment, their first house, getting them out of trouble, whatever it might be. And you really learn how they look at life. So for me, when my daughter got sick, she was 12 years old. I spent a lot of time in oncology rooms and waiting offices, doctors' rooms and oncology rooms and that kind of thing. And you have a lot of time to think. So I basically started writing her a letter about what I thought was important in life and what she should be chasing. And the words comfort, peace, and freedom just would not get out of my head. I couldn't get rid of them. And so in combination with that letter I wrote to her, my coaching over the years led me to think about life as a visionary tool, as a go forward tool, as a what do you want your life to look like and how can you design it and then go get it? And so the book just appeared out of all that experience. And I never intended to be an author, but it worked out pretty good in the end. And 80,000 words later, I had a book.
Oh, good on you. That's excellent. Now, if we're talking about leadership here, and I think for me, a lot of leaders don't know what their life's about. What I find quite intriguing is people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, some of them go, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm like, whoa. And do you find that with people? And then what, if that's the case, what should they be doing to try and understand where they might want to go in life?
Well, a couple things are going to happen in life. Okay. You can either lead an if then life, which means if you do all these things the right way through school, through college, through scholarships and learning, and then maybe you can live your life if you do it right. I don't believe in that. I think you should start with what the then looks like first and then go through one of the many ways to get there. And I tell the same things in my speeches and when I'm coaching leaders is you better happen to life or life is going to happen to you.
Mm.
And so I want you to start out with what would my perfect nirvana look like if I could design the life the way I see it for myself? And we're not all going to be, pop stars and baseball players and professional athletes or whatever. We aren't all going to chase 15 cars and a mega yacht and a big house. And some people just want to live a certain way. And I love to zero in on, well, what does that look like to you specifically? Forget about society, the expectations and the norms. Forget about what everybody else tells you how to live your life. What do you want it to look like? Because if I can get you to manifest that into some physical thing, almost like the cover of a puzzle box, right? Where you can't put the puzzle together unless you have the box. If I can get you to put that into some type of visual and then allow the visual side of your brain to work, which is the most powerful part of your brain, by the way, that's where the real magic is. See what you want your life to look like first, and then pick one of the many paths to getting there.
Yeah, I think it's so important for people to really understand what you just said there, because that end picture, where we're wanting to go, it's great. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be easy to go along the way in the journey? You're going to go straight there? No, it never works that way. But I think the important thing is for us to actually have it. Ken, when I'm working with a lot of leaders around the world, sometimes they say to me this, I've never planned my career, it's just happened. Is it important for people to really have that plan, that end picture, or should they just throw mud on the wall and hope it sticks?
Well, I believe that all entrepreneurs have a certain number of characteristics, and I write about this in Blue Collar Cash. I think there's persistence, there's resilience, there's initiative, there's faith, there's courage, there's vision, there is generosity and simplicity. There's a lot of characteristics that all entrepreneurs have, but I also believe, Dennis, that everybody has those characteristics. They just need a reason for them to come out. So even when an entrepreneur tells you, my career just found its way, I truly believe that they had some driving force or vision for what they wanted their life to look like. And then that vision showed itself in the path that they took. Because I don't care whether I've talked with Jarek Robbins and son of Tony Robbins about the science behind seeing something. And it's amazing. It doesn't just happen by accident. Neurotransmitters begin to click into your brain to the point where after they see something so many times, it becomes almost one stream of conscious thought. And at that point, your brain tells your body, okay, I need you to start to be more aware of this. I need you to start feeling this. I need you to start taking advantage of these opportunities in the chase of that particular vision. So you almost have another human being working for you that you don't even know about. And that's why it's not necessarily an accident. You probably saw something, wanted something, and then found the opportunity to go make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good. Some good points there. How did you actually get into entrepreneurship, leadership? I know you shared the story about going through the hole in the fence and so forth, but how did you actually get into, say, leadership?
Well, I realized a couple of things. So when you're running 20, 30, 40, 70, 80, 120, 130, 180, 200 people, one of the things that happens is you better realize that you can't do it all.
Mhm.
And you're going to need to surround yourself with entrepreneurs, but in a different form. They call them intrapreneurs, people that want to work within your organization and feel like they own their positions, but don't necessarily take the ownership of a company. So I always say it this way, Dennis, the best thing you can do for your company is to become irrelevant to it. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to rise above whether you're floating in a helicopter or whatever you're doing metaphorically and look back down on your business and say, what's happening now? What do I see 1 mile ahead, 3 miles ahead, 10 miles ahead? That's going to affect me. And then you work on your business, not in it. And so I think the ego of that is difficult for some people because they can't let go. I built this place. I own this place. I started this place. I make all the decisions. Yeah, fine. But you also have high blood pressure. You work 80 hours a week and you forgot your kids' names. You really have to be careful there. But I found that the less I work, the more I surround myself with entrepreneurs, the more my company has exploded because one person just can't do it all.
Wow, I love it. I find that people actually, some entrepreneurs, leaders, and that they actually get in the way after a while. And so, just what you're saying there, if they get in the helicopter view and work on the business, not in the business, and let go, and for a lot of them, as you say, it's quite hard for them to let go, but that's the key. And if they do, imagine where the business might go. It could just take off
Well,
big time.
I've got a really scary story to tell you about that. So
Okay.
there was a time when I brought all the entrepreneurial candidates that I had into my conference room and I gave them all a little piece of paper and a pencil. And I said, I want you to write down how many more millions in revenue we could do next year. Okay. And you're free to bring ideas in to make that happen. But also think carefully because I'm going to share the difference between what we're doing now and that number that you think we could do. I'm going to share that number with all of you. Okay. And the revenue. Okay. And the profit sharing of that. Wouldn't you know it, Dennis, that all their numbers were a million or two higher than mine? So I didn't even want to show them my number. In fact, I didn't. I put the piece of paper back in my pocket, never to be seen again. But the lesson there is be careful that you're not your own self-limiter
Mm.
because these people had numbers bigger than mine and I unleashed them on that. And they basically were saying, wait a minute, Ken. So what you're saying is if we get to this bigger number, you're going to give us some of that? Yeah, absolutely. And it was easy for me to do because it was money I didn't have yet, right? Didn't cost me a nickel. So they're like, well, then thanks for the opportunity. Now get the hell out of our way and let us go do it. And we've never looked back. So to your point, you got to be careful that you're not the one holding your own company back.
Oh, well, I love the actual scenario. There was an organization I worked with just prior to Christmas, and I did a one-day strategy planning session with them. And one of them was about the competitors in the market, but I was also asking who, and this is what I do with other organizations, is there an organization you can go and buy? And of those competitors, is there one of them? And they were like, oh, and then the owner, the founder was sort of like, and the staff were so excited because they're like, yeah, but we could do this and we could do that. And it actually blew the founder out of the water. He could not believe it. And what he was seeing, the energy and the excitement from people, but they all knew there was going to be a lot of hard work to make it happen.
Sure.
Then is the lesson for him was if I hand it to them to see what they think, and exactly the scenario you just talked about, I think it's great. So listeners, there's an example whereby Ken's just sharing here that maybe we are the ones that get in the way. just get out of the way and let people get on with it. I think it's a good thing.
Well, not only that, but you want to live a life. You started your own business so you could have the freedom, the control. You control your input, your output, the quality of that output, the length of your day, the time, the schedule, your financial gain. So why are you becoming a prisoner of this thing when in fact you can bring more people in? It doesn't cost you anything because the increase in revenue pays for all of that. And now you get to go back to working 40 hours a week. You have a life. You can go on your date nights. You can take your kids out. You could do the things you want to do. And that's the whole reason you wanted a business to begin with, was to be able to build you that freedom. So yeah, I would encourage people to be very careful about that.
Yep, good point. Hey, Ken, now this person can be alive or from history. Who's been your favorite leader and why?
I had two favorite leaders. So I call him more of a mentor type of relationship. My father was, again, the imperfect perfectionist, but I think I learned a lot by having to remake my bed 4 or 5 times in order to make it perfect. Okay. I think I learned a lot from having to rewash the car several times to make it perfect. And so there was a lot of inspiration there of how to do things right. And if you're going to do it right. So that was my father. The other one was my first boss, who I still have a relationship today. He was like the opposite of my dad. He was a driver, sure, but he lived a life more like Mick Jagger. He had a really like a playboy kind of life. And I got to see a lot of that because I was like his assistant. So I had to procure a lot of those things for him, cars and boats and trips and all that kind of thing. So for me, I got to see both sides of how you can live well, the disciplined side and more of the crazy side. And both of those kind of blended in the middle. And I got to see kind of a mid-range of how to live really, really well. And that was a lot of fun to watch both those things happening.
So both of them very, very successful by the sounds of it in their lives and things like that. If you were sitting on a park bench with one of them, having a coffee, would there be one question you would love to ask them?
Oh my gosh. I guess what I would ask them is, you've taught me to see my life going forward 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Did you see it yourself or did you learn along the way? Because it would have been amazing to see them go, oh yeah, I figured that I was going to live this way and live that way. I would love to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I would too. I think it's a great question. Yeah. And also going back to what you said earlier on about having that sort of vision ahead of you about where you wanted to go, but then did they actually have that vision or did they, as you said, did they actually work it out on the way? Yeah, that'd be really good. Yeah. Hey, look, the show is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does that mean for Ken?
I would say this. I would say that if you took myself and all 200 of my employees and you put me in a parking lot, shoulder to shoulder, and you brought some people in and said, pick out who the boss is, I would not want them to pick me out. I would think that would be a really bad thing. And the reason I say that is because I can't get what I want for my company, nor can I get what I want for myself, Dennis, until all of the people within my company get what they want for themselves first. And I believe that because companies are linear creatures. From the one side, you have a group of people, and then they create a product or a service or a software or a widget or whatever they build. And then that thing has a price tag put on it. It's delivered, it's installed, and then it's paid for. And hopefully at the end of the line, there's some profit. Well, guess where I'm standing? I'm always at the end of that line. So why wouldn't I want everyone within my company to thrive for themselves? So I'll often say, you're here to work for yourself first and for me second. You're here to work for yourself and your life first, for the company second. And I truly believe that, because if you can get a whole lot of people that are synergistically thriving for themselves with and through your organization, your company's going to fly, probably whether you want it to or not. Yeah. So that's the change I see in leadership today.
Yeah, good. That's good. Now, in entrepreneurship, because when you and I talk about entrepreneurship, we're talking about leaders as well. Leaders, I think everyone's a leader. But when we talk about business, entrepreneurship, things like that, for me, it seems to be getting faster all the time. The technology is driving a lot of it, data. There's a whole lot going on. What are entrepreneurs, leaders, what do they need to be doing today to make sure that they're successful in a fast-paced, ever-changing world?
Well, first off, I think they need to afford the time themselves to be aware of these things. And that's what I said a little bit earlier. If I'm fighting a war, I don't want to be on the ground wondering what's over those mountains. I want to be up in the air looking 5, 10 miles ahead and go, oh, there's the enemy right there. There's the enemy right there. And I want to be able to take advantage of those new technologies that are showing up. So you have to afford, that's where becoming irrelevant to the company is so important, Dennis, because you have to be able to have the time to be aware to even receive those things and to play around with them and to experiment and see if they're going to work for your company. If you're stuck so much in the trenches, that stuff's going to roll right over top of you, and it's either going to hit you in the face or it's going to be too late. So I really believe having the time to be aware to see those things is what's important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I find that people are stuck in the trenches. For a lot of people, they started a business because they're really good at something and they got that talent there, and they love, sometimes for them it's hands-on the tools and they love doing it. But as their business starts to grow and you've been talking about it, you're having to bring other people on board. And so now you start to play a different role. For some of them, they want to still keep playing on the tools. And I'm like, yeah, but you're in a different role now. If that's the case, then you probably need to get another leader in to run the business for you if you're willing to let go of that. And that's what you've been talking about for sure. Yeah. And so I'm finding that, yeah. What are your thoughts about this thing out there that people are talking about all the time? AI, artificial intelligence, the digital side of life. What are you seeing around that? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's like the year 2000. Remember when we turned from 1999 to 2000 and everyone was like, oh my God, all the animals are going to run backwards and things are going to, the world's going to spin the opposite way. I think it is something to be aware of, but not necessarily to be afraid of. I think if you were somebody that was in maybe the editing business, yeah, you might be thinking, okay, well, these computers can think faster than I can. I get that. But I don't think anyone's going to be planting trees with a robot anytime soon. I don't think anyone's going to be doing someone's hair or fixing a basement or digging a ditch, so the things that we do. They've tried some of those things and they're just, the human element is just way too important there. So I think that, like anything else, if you're on the roof building a house, you used to have to measure the piece of wood that you wanted and then get off the ladder, go down to the saw and cut that piece and then climb back up there. Well, now with AI, you can say, you take your phone and just hover it above that piece and it sends a message down to the guy on the ground who's cutting it, and it's there in 2 minutes. That kind of thing, I think, only enhances the ability to do your business. So I think you should find those things that are enhancing your business, but I don't think you should necessarily fear the overall, the machine is coming for me kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, it's those tools, is the way I call it, is they're enablers. They will actually help you do it. Yeah, and it's maybe more efficient or quicker. But then I think there are people who are fearing it. But it's like, I remember Ken many years ago, and when we had cassette tapes and then we went into CDs, well, watch out for those CD things. I don't know about it. And so it's just about change, right? It's just the way that we go through things, and it'll take it. And it's interesting to see whether people are early adopters or later adopters.
Yeah. If you think about moving dirt in the old days, you had a wheelbarrow, right? And you had two handles and you filled it with dirt and you walked around and you dumped the dirt. Then somebody said, wow, what if my hands and my feet could all be hydraulically worked so that I could just move dirt like a crazy person, like one guy could do the work of 10 guys. Well, guess what? They do that. It's called a bobcat. It's a skid steer. Well, we assumed all of that without the world blowing up. So you do have to recognize that these changes are going to be positive changes, and just find what works for you, put it into your business and just rock on. I think that's the way to look at it.
Nice. And with you, I'm going to change lens here because we've been talking about leadership and so forth. We're going to talk about from an employee's perspective. You mentioned them earlier on about a meeting that you did, but are you noticing that employees' expectations of leaders changing at all?
No, I will say this. There's more competition for human beings than there's ever been. So what has changed is this. It used to be I could put an ad in the paper for a job to advertise a job, and the next day there'd be 7 people sitting in my front room, in my foyer of my office. Okay. And I could pick from these 7 people and say, wow, this is great. I need someone. And there they are. Well, now there's only 3 people. And the difference is, instead of me looking at them and saying, why should I hire you? they're looking back at me and saying, hey, dude, what's in it for me to work here? So there's a completely different seismic shift as to the attitudes of the people coming in because they literally have so many options now that maybe they didn't have before. So the egotistical boss, owner, or manager is going to be offended by that. How could you say that to me? I'm the boss. You're the one wanting a job. You should be more respectful. However, the crafty boss will say, well, let me answer that question for you. This is what's in it for you to work here, and talk about their culture and talk about their financial package and talk about the advancement. Because if someone comes to me and says, what's in it for me to work there? That means they're at least thinking about their future. They're at least thinking about what they want. So why wouldn't I want to answer that question instead of being offended by it? So if there is a switch, the switch is the culture is much more important now than it's ever been. And to be honest with you, Dennis, when you're running a bunch of ditch diggers who hold on to jackhammers all day long, I've had to work on culture way before culture was cool. So I've had to work on that for 30 years. And now when people say, wow, I got to work on my culture now, I laugh because I'm like, well, I've been doing that for a very long time. Welcome to the party. But I really think culture is a really competitive thing now, but it's actually something everyone should do because you should have a fun, enjoyable place to work. And a lot of people need to work on that.
Yeah, I actually look at it as well there. It's more like, even if I take real estate as an example, the market changes. There's the seller's market. So the sellers now command things. And then there's the buyer's market. And with employees today, I think they're the buyer's market, right? They're the ones that are looking at things. And you're spot on what you're saying too. If they don't actually understand the culture, the purpose, what's in it, then they're going to vote with their feet. They just leave. Yeah. So they're actually looking for it really strongly as well. Ken, if I was to get you to get your crystal ball out now and think about the future here, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
I see leadership in 5 years being a place where anyone who comes into your building very quickly understands that they can build the life that they want for themselves with and through your company. And you have to make that crystal clear as quickly as possible. Because Dennis, we have to remember the content of the book metaphorically has to be as good as its cover. And if your book doesn't match the cover, meaning if you invite someone in and you interview them and all of a sudden the story changes when they put their first day of work in, you got a problem there. So we're trying to make it to where the onboarding process is almost a celebration. You know what I mean? We talk about people's personal goals. Our interviews aren't about here's your hours, here's your uniform, here's your pay, here's your health care. Our interviews are about why are you here? What do you want for yourself? How can we make that work? Because if your goals align with our goals, the synergy is amazingly powerful. So I'm talking about what you want for yourself in the interview. I'm not even waiting until they're hired. So I think leadership is going to be a place where people walk in and go, wow, do they know me? Even though they've only met me. Okay. And they're endeavoring to know that. And I think that's going to be the big thing going forward.
Yeah, they're interested in me. They hear me. I've been acknowledged. That's huge, what you've just shared there. Ken, it's been awesome talking to you today. If our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Well, you can see the book at kenrusk.com, R-U-S-K, kenrusk.com. I have a course there that I use for people. This isn't one of those $2,000 courses where I want your whole life story. It's literally an 8-session course. It's only 45 minutes a session. And a lot of companies book club it. That's been the most popular buyer of the course. They'll get the book and then they'll get the course and they'll book club it inside their office. And then the synergy that comes from that is amazing. So that's really cool. I'm working on my next book now called Talent Rules, which is how to build culture that would attract those types of people. So yeah, you can find all of that at kenrusk.com.
Excellent. Well, we're going to put that in the show notes, listeners. So Ken, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, and you as well. I really appreciate the time and the subject. This is something that's going to be even more important as we move forward, as the competition for human beings gets even more and more and more. So I encourage everyone to take a good look at their culture and start working on it now.
There you go, listeners. Well, thank you, Ken. Well, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your career to look like? And are you surrounding yourself with intrapreneurs? Or are you becoming irrelevant? It's a really cool thing that Ken actually mentions and talks about. Well, The thing here is, does your book cover match what you are and what you do? An interesting question that Ken has actually asked. There you go, listeners. Hey, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.